feeling good, can y'all tell?
Okay, Hotel family, my name is Brother Ray Ray.
What's up?
We'd like to welcome everyone to the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr.'s History Club. We meet here every other Wednesday in honor of William Mackey Jr., Louis Ray Rivera, Amos Wilson, Gil Noble, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Ivan Van Sertima, and all the historians that gave up fame and fortune, Minister Khalid, Sister Leola Maddox, and Brother Hassar, who made this transition, so we don't want to forget. He had a wonderful service out in Queens, but we're going to miss Brother Hassar. He was one of the original Mackey members. So we meet here, Brother Harold. We meet here in honor of these people. We never want their work to go unnoticed, because coming into this new millennium, you just don't know what's going on. So we meet here to keep these people alive and keep their name going. Now I got a couple of books in honor of Sababu, Amos Wilson, and African World Info Systems. We have Blueprint for Black Power, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat Toward a Reclamation of the African Mind, Developmental Psychology of the Black Child, Falsification of African Consciousness, African-Centered Consciousness versus the New World Order, Issues of Manhood in Black and White, and Amos's classic, Black on Black Violence, the Psychodynamics of Black Self-Annihilation in Service of White Domination. And what you hear all over the place, family, is black on black violence. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing that? Oh, it's an atrocity. Everything is going crazy, but you never hear anybody mention Amos's classic, Black on Black Violence.
That's right.
Never hear it. And everybody got some kind of problem on why this is happening. But we have these books to help Sababu and African World Info System to continue the work of Amos Wilson. Now also we have some more books that we have for the community to buy and read. Carol Alexander, The Unspoken Truth of Racial Divide. Brother Earl Ponder, Revealing the Unspeakable Bible Verses, The Truth About Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the Holy Trinity. This guy passed away too soon, and he had a whole bunch of books, and we tried to help Sababu sell them so he could help African World Info Systems. He left us too soon. In honor of Dr. Randy Short, Slavery Mastery, The Impact of Religious Slavery Revealed. We have that, Dr. Randy Short. Charles Hamilton Houston in the struggle for civil rights, not these 20th century civil rights leaders.
That's right.
See, the people now are civil rights leaders with private jets and big bank accounts. And they got the nerve to be honoring Dr. King. And he was helping sanitation workers. And these civil rights leaders is running around with this nonsense. They should never mention his name. S.K. Damiana, Distorted Truths, The Bastardization of African Cosmology. We have this book. Theodore Allen, The Invention of the White Race, Introduction. We have this. And I just picked this book up, The Lost Jews, Last of the Ethiopian Philosophers. Something I just ran across. Cynthia McKinney, When China Sneezes, From the Coronavirus Lockdown to the Global Political Economic Crisis. You hear a lot of people running around talking about they care about the people of Georgia. This is the only one, in my opinion, who ever cared about the people in Georgia. Cynthia McKinney. She cared about the people in Georgia. I don't know who they got down there now, but it's a disgrace. She has a book out. Io Camanti, The Irritated Genie. His Jays Are the Problem. World War III, COVID-19, and media censorship. His book is unbelievable, and you can get it at War on the Horizon. Also, in honor of Big Harold, who left us too soon, I learned about this book, The Transfer Agreement, the untold story of the secret pact between the Third Reich and Jewish Palestine. Harold mentioned this book, and we don't want to forget Harold. In honor of Dr. Ben, black man of the Nile and his family. This is in honor of Dr. Ben. Also, this is brothers from out of Atlanta, Georgia. His name is Dr. Scott Whitaker, and his book, Medicine, M-E-D-I-S-I-N, The Causes and Solutions to Disease and Malnutrition and the Medical Sins That Are Killing the World. This is Dr. Scott Whitaker. Excellent book. Ladies and gentlemen, The Truth About COVID-19 by Dr. Joseph McCullough and Ronald Cummins, and The Real Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, Big Pharma, and the Global War on Democracy and Public Health. Get these books and read them, and you're going to get a whole nother unbelievable. So we have these books. These are books that we want the listening audience and the community to purchase. You can get them anywhere and read them because it's about information. And one thing about Sister Leola Maddox, who left us too soon, she drove an old car from Teaneck, New Jersey, Patterson, New Jersey, right, Mike? Teaneck, New Jersey, all the way to United African Movement on every Wednesday, so she could provide live lectures and bring people together. And that is the aim of the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club, is to bring people together. To not see, they want you separated. They don't want you coming out. They want you staying home. Leola Maddox was not like that. She came every Wednesday. So that is our aim, to provide information to the community. So for the people that's supporting us, give yourself a big hand. It's raining in New York and you still came out. Now I'm going to mention a few community events. Tomorrow, Thorough Black Talk on YouTube. And, are they on Facebook?
Yes.
YouTube and Facebook at 8 o'clock. Our sister Keisha, Tad, and Brother Ashe and Brother Blacksmith on YouTube. That's Thursday at 8 p.m. on Facebook and YouTube. That's an excellent program. Our Philadelphia Connection, Sister Empress Chi, Blog Talk Radio. Philadelphia Connection, that comes on every Saturday at 10:30. If you got a pen, the telephone number is 1-319-527-6189. You dial that number at 10:30 and you can tune in to Sister Filet and the Million Women's March, Blog Talk Radio, when they start at 10:30 and they be hitting it live. That's an excellent program. Also, WSYP 95.1 FM out of Birmingham, Alabama. Brother Anthony Muhammad and Io Kamati, Sankofa Radio. That program comes on every Monday at 10 a.m. in the morning. That's Sankofa Revolutionary Radio, and Brother Io Kamati has an excellent program that comes on at 10 o'clock. Also, our Baltimore family with Brother Darren Muhammad. That's the State of the City. Tune in Radio, 1590 a.m. 12 o'clock Saturday. Also on Instagram under the title Mohammed the Cannon. And on Facebook Live. That comes on Saturday at 12 o'clock, and sometime he comes on Wednesday and on Thursday. So that's our Baltimore connection. Also, every Tuesday at 7 p.m., Dr. Aline, Your Immunity Project, 7 p.m. And that's California Radio comes on Thursday at 9 o'clock. Also, Brother Truss Graham and the African Echo Study Group, our Newark family out of Newark, they come on 8 o'clock with Brother Danny and Brother True. That study group starts at 8 o'clock, and Brother Truss goes on the Lord knows when. And they're doing Amos's book, The Psychology of Self-Hatred and the Reclamation of the African Mind. That's Brother Truss. Also on Saturday, the Know Thyself study group with Brother True and his brothers out of Asbury Park. Truss Graham also mediates that. And they're doing Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization. If you put your email in the chat, Brother True is on and he will give you the information. And you can log on to that Saturday group, and that's at 1:30. Also, Simultap Community Family with Dr. James. Please mute yourself. Dr. James McIntosh, 99.5. Minefield, that comes on every Wednesday. I think at 1:30 to 2:30.
2 o'clock.
2 o'clock. That's Dr. James McIntosh and the Simultap organization. Minefield, 99.5 on WBAI. That's an excellent program. And also, Community Cop with Mike Graves, Noah Olina, and Julian Harper. That program comes on every Tuesday at 5 o'clock, Manhattan Neighborhood Network. That's an excellent program, and you can view all the Community Cop episodes on YouTube under Community Cop. Also, family, you can view all the William Mackey Jr. lectures on YouTube under BK William Mackey Jr. History Club. All our lectures is on. This lecture with Brother Tad will be put on there. Now, I also just have one more announcement. And then we're going to bring our speaker on. The Simultap organization is having another presentation with Dr. Amos Wilson. This is James McIntosh. That's Saturday, January 28th at 2 p.m. If you go on the Simultap, there you have more information. That's James McIntosh and Sister Betty Dobson. If you have a pen, I can tell you right now, I'll put the chat and the ID and the passcode in the chat. You can write it down, and this program is going to be January 28th at 2 o'clock. That's an Amos Wilson presentation with Dr. James McIntosh. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these are just community events for you to participate in and to educate yourself on a lot of things that's going on, because that's what we're about. Now, we have a brother coming on who's a member of that Thorough Black Talk radio team with Sister Keisha and Brother Ashe and Brother Blacksmith. We have one of the founding members of the Thorough Black Talk radio program. Ladies and gentlemen, give yourself a great big hand for a good brother and a fitness buff to the utmost. Brother Tad of the Thorough Black Talk radio program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, family. Thank you. All right. I want to say thank you for having me. Pardon my lateness. Blame it on the brain, not the heart. And I definitely want to thank my big brother Mike Graves, Brother Ray for having me. There's so many people I want to thank. The supporters of Thorough Black Talk radio show, also my sister Keisha, my brother Ashe, Brother Blacksmith, and I'd be remiss if I don't mention our sister Marcia Wah, who occasionally jumps in and joins the conversation. Now, for those who may not know, my name is Brother Tad of Thorough Black Talk. I came into this movement about 1997, I want to say, and it was by happenstance that I was already reading, studying, trying to learn our culture as a young black man growing up in Brooklyn.
Right.
One night, I was going to the store to get some snacks for my children, and I'll never forget, there was one person that I always saw on television, on the radio, and in fact, he was also on one of my favorite rappers' albums, the rapper Ice Cube. It was a big black bald-headed man, and he was just glowing from behind. So I couldn't believe who it was, so I had to spin around a little bit and look in his face. And I looked, and it was none other than the most honorable Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad. So I introduced myself to that brother and told him that, you know, I'm a young man trying to find my way through the hells of North America. We exchanged information. He put me in touch with some people from D12. He said, you know, I'm stepping out of New York for a little while, but I'll be back in a couple of days. Get in touch with these people. I did that, and the rest was history. Me and Dr. Khalid built a relationship, and I just stood around him soaking up knowledge. I was very quiet, but I also attended the UAM, and that was prior to meeting Dr. Khalid when it was at the Slave Theater, because one thing I did find out was that so many of our, who are now ancestors, but our cultural and African giants were right in the midst of our community, right on Fulton Street and Bedford Avenue, every Wednesday.
That's right.
Every Wednesday. And I couldn't believe it. People that I saw on TV, people that I saw on Gil Noble's Like It Is. Because again, I was just a young man. I didn't have much knowledge and information, but I knew whatever I was getting in school couldn't have been the truth, because it would always omit us from the history books, and anything that they did put in the books about us, it made us appear to be weak or docile, or that we didn't contribute anything. And I knew that to not be true.
That's right.
So with the guidance of an elder that was in my community, Baba Curtis Sweets Odom, he would always come kick it with me, his younger brother-in-law, who was my friend. That's how I met Baba Sweets. He would always give us a little jewels, a little information.
Right.
You know, always had shirts that were bucking the system, that were celebrating our African identity and just bucking this Eurocentric system. And he would come in, ask us what we was doing, ask us if we read this book or heard about this person, and just drop little seeds on us. And then he step off like a thief in the night. He just say something, not even 5 minutes of a conversation, but he planted those seeds in our young, impressionable minds, and it put many of us onto the path. Me, myself, I pretty much stayed on it a little longer than most, because with that, we lost a lot of friends, and his brother-in-law being one of them. At the young age of 17, you know, he was murdered out in these streets. So it's always why. Every time a young person dies in our community, we ask why. But seldom do we really take an earnest look at the situation of where we are. Why do this happen? Why do us as young black men feel the need to look at each other as enemies? So we started reading books, getting in tune with Malcolm, pulling back the layers of what's really happening in our society. And as we started listening to Malcolm more and more, watching Like It Is more and more, we started coming across people like Dr. John Henry Clark, like a Dr. Amos Wilson, like a Dr. Ben. And they started giving us the jewels, the missing pieces, to what we inherently know in our DNA is not right. You know, it's almost like grandma's wit. Sometimes she don't have the words to articulate her position, but she'll just say, something just ain't right about that. She can't put a finger on it, but it resonates in her spirit. And that's passed on to us from generation to generation. So tonight what I'll be talking about is, what does it take to be a black revolutionary in the new millennium? Because sure enough, as I name these scholars who are now transitioned to ancestors, who are the new scholars? Who's gonna pick up the slack, moving our young people forward? Because the crisis that we see our young people in right now, with this pandemic that's going on right now, it's more than evident that there's a concerted effort to continue the genocidal attack amongst African people.
That's right.
There's a song Stevie Wonder has called Pastime Paradise, and I never really understood the lyrics until I got older. And it applies to a multitude of situations. But the point is, you can't live your life living in a pastime paradise. Unfortunately, I see a lot of elders celebrate the 60s, and rightfully so. But those strategies that worked in the 60s no longer serve us in the 2020s. We're in a whole new millennium.
That's right.
And unfortunately, I see too many people still believe that we have to march, still believe that we can vote our way into freedom. And we know those are antiquated ideas that have proven to fail us time and time again. But there's still some fundamental principles in this revolutionary that has to be taken serious. That's physical fitness. We have to stay strong, family.
That's right.
There's mental fitness, and that goes by way of studying, reading. As Brother Ray showed you, we have a multitude of books and lectures that we can draw information and knowledge from. And then there's the spiritual component. Whether you believe in God or not, the higher power is irrelevant. It makes no difference to me personally. But I want somebody to point me one successful black revolutionary that didn't have our Creator in the midst, regardless of what name you call him by. And I feel that we need those three components constantly in place. We need our physical fitness, our mental acuity, and we have to have our spiritual fitness. Whether you're Christian, Islamic, Hebrew, whatever you identify. If you worship a head of lettuce like read on and what's happening, that's your business. As Malcolm said in the message to the grassroots and in the Ballad of the Bullet, when we come out, let's put our religion in the closet because we have work to do.
That's right.
Now, when I came into this movement, as I stated earlier, I came in under the tutelage of Dr. Khalid, just sitting around in some quiet spaces where he had private conversations with folks that I was privy to. And I just soaked all that knowledge in. But there's more than just knowing this information. There's more than just citing a quote from a book or a passage. You have to get active. Now that we got this information, what do we do with it? Do we just one-up each other and say, well, brother, did you read this book? Or sister, did you read that book? No, we have to get out of that paradigm and we have to get active in the streets. Now, I came into this movement, I got the knowledge, but then it was like, what do I do with it? So I joined several organizations, too many to name, but two organizations will always stand out and I will always be forever grateful for. One is the African Village and Research Cultural Center of New York, under the leadership of our brother Vernon Wells.
Yes, sir.
The other one is the Straight Black Pride movement, under the leadership and guidance of my brother Irritated Genie.
Yes, sir.
Now, within our movement, we always have little petty disagreements, which Garvey told us a long time ago. Let's put that to the side. But the one thing I will say about these two organizations, and particularly the leaders of this organization, I never met two men that were so sincere and honest about what they were doing. Contrary to whether you agree with them or not, I can honestly say, as somebody that studied right up under these two men, Brother Vernon Wells and the Irritated Genie, I haven't met men as sincere as them as Dr. Khalid. And I would always remind them, you know, particularly Genie, I also you remind me of Dr. Khalid, the level of sincerity, to spend days on the road, out of town, you know, and just see how he's willing to give so much for his people that most people don't understand. Because then we hear slander and lies and people try to throw personal jabs, which a lot of it is not true. And I'm just saying, this is not to defend anybody, but this is to talk about true leadership. Because that's something that's also lacking in our community. True leadership. You don't have to know everything, but you have to be honest and sincere about the direction you're trying to move your people in. And these two men that I've mentioned, our brother Irritated Gene and our brother Vernon Wells, have been the most sincere brothers that I've ever stood next to.
Yes,
and
sir.
like I said, I've stood in a lot of organizations. And I can only hope to be half as disciplined as these two brothers as I'm on my journey to leadership and organizing the people and doing what I do. So, with that being said, I encourage you to go find an organization, one that fits you, one that fits your spirit. Come to the William Mackey Study Group. These brothers are here for you, giving information from a bunch of different perspectives, as long as it's African-centered, because we can't get confused. And we're going to talk about that later on in my presentation, about what is the black struggle, what is the black revolution. I think that's something Malcolm touched on a long time ago. You have your black revolution and your Negro revolution. And unfortunately, in the new millennium, we see that the Negro revolution is moving full steam ahead, particularly with Black Lives Matter being at the helm. So when we say we are revolutionaries, what does that mean? To be a revolutionary, that means a change. But a change in what? Can we change society? It's possible. Can we change our people around us? Probably. But can we change ourselves? Most definitely. And these are the things that we have to do. First of all, we have to start taking an inventory of ourselves, our belief system, and how valid is it. Now, some of us, if not many of us, are familiar with the principles of Mayat. We understand that to get to the underworld, Mayat, she takes our heart and put it on the scale and weighs it against an ostrich feather. I often encourage people that whatever your belief system is, put it on the scale against the antithesis of your belief system and weigh it out. As Brother Mike Graves would always say, see if it passed the smell test. Because unfortunately, many times we'll get a new piece of information, and since our paradigm is limited, we'll hold that information and run with it as if it's gospel, not realizing there's more information, there's more to know out there. That's why we have to constantly study. But beyond the study, how is our physical health? Because you can have all this information, but if you're suffering from hypertension, high blood pressure, heart disease, gout, and all of these other things, what good are you to the people if you don't even have longevity? What good are you to the community as a man if you don't have the physical strength to protect the women, children, and elders?
That's right.
So this is why physical fitness is so important. And believe it or not, it's not as hard as it may seem. Many of us are over the 50 mark. I just made 50, so I'm grateful for that. You know, I still have my limbs, my wits, and my faculties. In fact, I even ran there literally in the rain with boots on to make sure that I'm here to honor my commitment to my brothers. But with physical fitness, we can start by simple things as calisthenics. You can start with push-ups. If you can't do a simple push-up on the floor, thank you, brother. If you can't do a simple push-up on the floor, you can do it on a chair. If a chair is not good enough, lean against the wall and just push yourself off. Take a slight bend on the wall. Lean in, push off. Lean in, push off. And it doesn't matter how old you are, because as long as you can get up in the morning, it's never too late to improve yourself. And as you start building your strength from push-ups on the wall, then you go to a lower platform like a table. And then you get down to a chair and you do your push-ups. And once that becomes easier, then you get down to the floor, you get on your knees and do push-ups. And before you know it, you'll be doing a full-on push-ups as if you're back in high school. All right? These are simple things that can be done. And I'm giving you the tools. Because many times we talk about the history, we talk about the greatness of Africa and Kemet and all these African civilizations. But what greatness and legacy are we building today in the new world? Physical fitness is very important, because if you're not in a position to save our community, we're still dependent on the system that we say we're bucking. So why should we have to wait for the police if there's 3 strong brothers right there in the immediate vicinity that can protect that child, that can protect the elder and children, and even other brothers that may be outnumbered because there's ignorance amongst our community, as our brother Ray was citing quotes from Dr. Amos Wilson. So as men in our community, we have to be vigilant, and we're constantly on guard. This is why physical fitness is always so important. But not just the physical strength, but we also need the endurance. We need to make sure that when there's places we need to be, if all transportation shut down, we can still walk or run. We watch our enemies train day in and day out. We watch them organize their military. And we could do the same thing. Granted, it won't be on that scale, but we could start somewhere with something like a community watch program. Something small things that we've already had. What I'm saying hasn't been said before. It's just things that we're not doing right now. Things that it's almost like we forgot about, because in this new millennium, we have all these electronics and technological advances that are keeping us distracted from what the mission is. And the mission is sovereignty and safety for our black community. This is imperative now. Because when we look at the political climate, we see that right now, undocumented immigrants are being brought in to take our place in the society. Right. And if you're not familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson, I believe it was over 10 years ago, he gave a lecture talking about that this would happen. So here in New York alone, we're watching it manifest itself, but we're just watching it. We're not taking an active position in it to resist it. And this is not a slight to the people that are coming into this country, because I would do the same thing if the opportunity was presented to me. But this speaks about the system that kept us in this place, that kept us in these conditions, that has these negative images of who we are as black people in the media selling it to our children. Because the one thing we know, that this is a competition for the minds. And we know the winner is the first person to get to the young person's mind. If you get to the young person's mind early in the game, you're almost guaranteed victory. A person like me slipped through the cracks. But as Dr. Amos Wilson said in the developmental psychology of the black child, we have to start during the prenatal phase. We have to change our diet. And he's not just talking about nutrition in terms of qualitative and quantitative malnutrition. And I'll touch on that real quick, because when we talk malnutrition, we think quantitative malnutrition are not enough food.
Right.
But there's qualitative malnutrition, eating all the wrong food, the hot Cheetos, the pork rinds with extra hot sauce on it, the 2-liter Pepsi sodas and Coca-Colas, all these things that are damaging us. They have an effect on our body, our mental faculties, and all other things. But this goes into the physical fitness component, because food is our fuel. And if we're not properly nourished, then our bodies won't operate optimally. It won't function properly. And this is why when I go to a lot of lectures, it's so unfortunate, because I love our people, as beautiful as we are, but they're wearing their sickness. Everybody's limping. Everybody's with a cane. Everybody's in the wheelchair. And we don't know how much longer we'll have these people. So we embrace them at every lecture, at every community meeting. We love you, and we do embrace you. And it's important that this knowledge and information get out there, but we need you around as long as possible. This is very important. So with this physical fitness component, we really have to take a holistic approach at what it is, because it's more than just reading the books about our successes and our failures. We have to be proactive in this. So when the immigrants come in, that I'm bearing witness to on a daily basis, Brother Mike, I work in that capacity. I work with these people on a daily basis. And I'm watching them come in. And I'm watching them do the jobs that many of us, not all of us, but many of our brothers and sisters think they're too good for.
Right.
And they come into this country, they get a bike, they get a free cell phone from welfare, they download all of these apps, Uber Eats, DoorDash, get them a little 2-wheeler bike. It ain't got to be the best. And they go to work. Just like that. They stack their little money. They get them an electric bike. Move a little faster, make more deliveries, make more money. And then they put their brothers on. They put their homies on. So meanwhile, while many of our brothers and sisters looking at the glamour and glitz of what it is to be financially stable in America, we're looking at lifestyles of the rich and famous, even though that don't come on no more, that type of opulence that's sold to us. Here, this little South American dude is making $300 to $500 a day riding bikes. $300 to $500 a day riding bikes. Just doing delivery. $300 to $500 a day. Let's go on the low end. $300 a day. That's $2,000 a month minimum. That's $2,100 a month. That's $8,400. That's about $2,000 a month a week. $8,000 a month. That's close to $100,000 a year riding bikes. But in the book, The Miseducation of the Negro, Dr. Carter G. Woodson talked about this. So if Dr. Carter G. Woodson could talk about this 100 years ago, why are we still having this conversation? Why do our young people still feel that they're too good to work at a McDonald's? Even though I'm not advocating selling that poison, because we're talking about physical fitness.
Right.
But where's our information about wealth and wealth building coming from? What's our source of information? We have to get in tune with those people, like a Dr. Claude Anderson, like a Dennis Kimbrough, and a few others that talk about financial literacy, because we have to put that in our arsenal as well. I For one, Tag Cromwell, do not take a vow of poverty. I do not pledge to be a poor righteous teacher. I know some people may have an emotional attachment to it based on the paradigm that it was introduced to us through the nation of gods and earths. But me personally, and this is no knock on nobody, but I will not take a vow of poverty.
Right.
Now, I don't have to have all the money, but we do have to have a war chest to fight off these people. Because the one thing we should understand that what's going on right now with this global reset is put in place by an organization called the World Economic Forum. You know, in the song The Message, the hip-hop song The Message by Melly Mel and Grandmaster Flash, they said it's all about the money. It's all about the money, ain't a damn thing funny.
Right.
Got to have a job in the land of milk and honey. In this land of milk and honey, people are being brought in by the thousands to replace us because they never finished exterminating African people. There's a global plan to exterminate us. Dr. Fauci's in on it, Bill Gates is in on it, it manifests itself. I lost my mother in this pandemic. And not through the virus, but through the Pope. Suffer from myocarditis. So peace upon my mother, you know. But one thing I learned when I came into this movement about the revolutionary, and I'm quite sure you all heard it, when you get into this movement, when you come into the revolution, be prepared to lose those people that you love. Unfortunately, we think it's going to be in fights, but no, sometimes it's going to be ideological differences. Sometimes it's going to be death because of the lifestyle that's chosen. Sometimes it's going to be the misinformation that's sold to our people, because as we look right now, we understand that this medicine is not effective and has been ineffective. But I always encourage people to go back to the writings of the classics. If we go back to Baba Del Jones' book, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, he talked about the impending civil war that has happened on January 6, 2021, I believe it was. Was it 21, Brother Mike? Or 20. 2020. He wrote in the book.
Yeah, 21, beginning of the year.
Right, January 6, 2021, when they rushed the U.S. Capitol. How did Baba Del Jones know about this? Because the writing is on the wall. He said there's going to be a war between the globalists and the white nationalists. But if we could remember, everybody was mad at Trump when he said, I'm a white nationalist. The whole world went up in arms, but America is a white nation. That's been established and preserved for white supremacy. Like, we can't make no mistakes about it. Who's confused about that? Either people are confused, don't know, or they're intentionally lying and deceiving you about what's at foot right now. So on a basic level, physical fitness will get our enemies off of us and out of our communities. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing said it in the ISIS papers. It's going to take masculine, male, muscular energy to fight white supremacy.
That's right.
We can learn as much as we want. We can cite all the books we want. We can sip all the green teas, burn all the incense, wear as many crystals as we want. We can Ashe and Hotep each other to death, and there's nothing wrong with that. Greeting each other in our African tongue. However, there's more to it, and we just can't stop there. We have to get the physical fitness component back into it. Why? Because if we don't organize our young people to take that physical fitness that they have to be defenders of our community, all the enemy's going to do is recruit them for itself, whether it's for its military or its entertainment, i.e. sports, basketball, boxing, football. And if we read our brother, I believe it was William Bowden's book, The $40 Million Slave, we can go through the history of that, on how we've always been recognized for our physical prowess, whether it's slavery or whether it's sports today, which we've seen happen with Kyrie Irving, for being a man, practicing Kuchi Chagalia, self-determination, making a plan for his own life, taking his destiny in his own hand, and not bending the knee like so many others do, like so many weak masculine men. Because there's one thing that we can see when you look in a man's eyes, regardless of how big his muscle is. If you look in his eye, and many of them, you can see the little boy in him that's hiding behind the muscles. So we have to get in touch with that little boy that's hiding behind the muscles, because maybe he felt somewhere in his life he wasn't defended. But we have to get in tune with him bring him up to proper manhood in terms of the psychological thinking, and then let him know of his responsibility of being on duty 24/7, of having to protect our community. Because unfortunately, too many of our people bury their heads in the sand. So physical fitness is imperative.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not saying you have to go join the gym and lift 1,000,000 pounds of weights and nothing like that. But we need you to go out and be a little more active. Go get in tune with nature. Just go find your local park and walk, whether you got Prospect Park, Central Park, any community park with a 1/4-mile track. Start with that. Develop your endurance. Start changing your lifestyle. Little tweaks in your diet. You know, remove a honey bun, you know, once a week. You know, you might like your little honey bun every day, you know. Remove that and replace it with a little asparagus. Constantly go to the doctor. I think it's very important that we have doctor visits, and that's a whole nother subject in itself with the medical industry, but there are good doctors out there that we can trust, like our brother Dr. Morgan here in Brooklyn, Dr. Gervais. And there's a few other doctors that really have our people interests at heart, that are taking an approach to holistic and natural medicine as opposed to this concoction that they're making in labs. But we definitely have to have our regular doctor visits. I know some of our people buck the system. I've read our sister Harriet Washington's book, A Medical Apartheid.
Right.
I'm familiar with it. I understand that it was doctors who were buying enslaved Africans and digging graves and things like that. But at the same token, we really can't leave things to chance. We have to take our health very serious. This is very, very important, because this would contribute to our longevity. The longer we're around, the more knowledge we have, the more wisdom we can impart on the people that's coming before us. Because whether we like it or not, those that are in this paradigm of African-centered thinking are the trailblazers. We are the trailblazers. We stand on the shoulder of giants. If you ever was in the presence of a Dr. Khaled, you see that brother worked out. You can see his muscular frame. You can see his confidence, knowing that he's strong. And that's what we need. We need strong men like that. We see it in organizations like the Nation of Islam and the Fruit of Islam. And whether you agree with their philosophy or not, we cannot deny that these brothers are cleaning brothers up that are downtrodden in the street and giving them a whole new frame of reference and a mindset.
That's right.
Now, whether we agree with some of the intricacies of the organization, I'm not here to debate that. But I am saying get organized. Because organizing is one thing that's going to strike the fear into these folks that are out for our demise. But aside from our physical fitness, we definitely have to get to mental fitness, our mental acuity. We have to start assessing where we are in our life, and are we really where we want to be? Unfortunately, as I was coming up in this movement and I was young, I was about 22, 23 years old, and I didn't have the information, and I would watch people, you know, they would peacock around because they read a book or they met this scholar or that scholar, and they've been here and they've been there, and try to make you feel less than because you don't have the information yet that they have. And they'll lean on that information, and unfortunately, instead of bringing up some of our people, some of our folks try to beat our folks down, and we can't be like that. You can't teach the people if you can't reach the people, and those of us that got this information are charged with teaching the people. Each one teach one. We have to understand that. Dr. Clark didn't beat us down for what we didn't know. He brought us up for what we didn't know. Now, you do have some scholars that I won't name that would beat you up if you don't know these things, you know, and it's unfortunate. But that's not how you reach the people. And for somebody that's looking for the knowledge, that's not how you welcome them into your home of African-centered identity. This actually pushes people away and repels them. And it makes us all look crazy. Those of us that have been in the movement for decades, that are serious about the work, that are serious about African freedom. You make us all look crazy when you do that. So when we talk about the mindset, we got to start assessing where we are, where we want to go. We have to start looking at who are our leaders and who are the people we shun. Why do we follow these people, and why do we disregard some of these people? Because within this movement, Brother Mike, I'm sure you can attest to this, many of our leaders don't get along.
That's right.
And that's all right, because everybody's not made to get along. But as long as it's not on a public display, as long as we're not constantly fighting in front of the camera, that's okay. Because the goal should be for the people, not to aggrandize our ego. Not to say that I'm the one who did this and I'm the one who did that. As long as the people benefit from whatever efforts you or your quote-unquote adversary is doing, it's a win-win. It reminds me of an Adinkra symbol called the Fantambereku Dinchimbereku. It's the double-headed crocodile in Ghana. And the crazy part about it is these two crocodiles are always fighting each other over food. But guess what? Whichever crocodile gets the food, they share the same stomach. So it's beneficial. And this is how we got to start moving within our movement. Whether you like another leader or organization is of little consequence. Do the people benefit is what we have to ask ourselves. If I'm doing a Feed the Hood program and Brother Mike is doing one and we have a little difference, as long as we feed the hood, it doesn't matter who does it. As long as the people get to eat, because that should be the goal. But when you put it on a scale, is your goal to feed the people or make yourself look good, have a big ego about feeding the people? And these are the things we have to start questioning leaders and leadership. Everything we do now, moving forward, we have to put it on a scale and finding the value system in it. Because if I only want to feed the hood so that News 12 can see me, then the problem's with me. But if Brother Mike don't even care who's on the camera, as long as he can get this food to the spot, then he's doing what's right for the people.
That's right.
And this is what we have to start looking at. Now, I'm going to say this too, because there's a flip side to that coin though. We do need spokespeople. So if you can articulate our position without putting your ego at the forefront, then by all means you do deserve to be in front of the camera. Because it's not about you. You're a spokesman for the people. Because as we all know in the African tradition, we can all sing together, but we can't talk together. We all can't talk at the same time. So we have to pick a spokesperson who really represents our interests, almost like a candidate in the politics, you know? So if Brother Mike can articulate our position that represents the whole, then by all means, let him get in front of the camera. Let him speak. Let him articulate our position and where we're going as a group in the community. But if I want to jump on camera and say, yeah, well, you know me as Brother Tad, I did this, and I did that, and I'm the one, and I'm the one, we have a problem. And I think we see that with a lot of our African-centered scholars who can't check their ego for whatever reason.
That's right.
You know, and unfortunately within our movement, some folks think we're hating on these scholars, but no, we're just pointing out the contradiction as to what all of our elders and ancestors have taught us on whose shoulders we stand on. There's no me without we. You know, I am because we are. Isn't that how they go, Brother Mike?
I am because we are.
I am because we are. It's Ubuntu. And we have to get back into that village mindset. But in this new millennium, everything is so individualized. Everything is individualistic. And I'm a little younger than some folks that may be on. But I do remember when Bed-Stuy was an African village. I remember, I grew up on Waverly Avenue and Fulton Street, right by Clinton and Washington. I can remember where almost every store in that community was black owned. I'm talking about from the tire shop to Mr. Day's videos. I'm talking about Miss Wilson's insurance company. I'm talking about the black dentist on St. James and Fulton. There was a black law firm in the community. I forget what block it was, but these were black businesses. Everything that we're talking about we need right now, everything that the new millennials are saying that we failed them at because they lack information, we've already had. And we have to critique how did we lose it. Because our mindset and our relationship with money and what is the value. So we value the few trinkets, the little gold and silver trinkets over the brownstone that Grandma and Pop had bought that they wanted to stay in the family. So here it is, 1985, somebody might have sold their brownstone for $50,000, $65,000, which may have seemed like a lot of money back then. But now this house is probably worth $6.5 million. And those people that sold the house in 1985 are still living. Their children are still living. Their grandchildren are still living. So when we talk about generational wealth, and we talking about competing in the global economy in the new millennium, unfortunately, we don't see the value in the things we possess because it's a reflection on what we think about ourselves and our community. So we give it up to some folks that see the value in who we are. That's why they kidnapped us. So we have to change our mind on who we are. This is why the works of Dr. Amos Wilson and Dr. Claude and all the other greats are so important. This is why we have to read the literature of the scholars to change our mindset, to change our paradigm. Our brother Ray Ray was talking about black on black crime. And I'm of the mindset that we have to stop calling it black on black crime. Because if we understand that when we use the term black, understanding this English lexicon, black is an adjective to describe a thing. So the object, the noun, is crime. That's the thing. Black is the adjective. But why when it comes to us, it's always an adjective to crime, but when it's to other communities, it's just crime. Crime is crime no matter where it's at. In China, they don't call it yellow on yellow crime. In Maine, they don't call it white on white crime. But whenever it's done in our community, they call it black on black crime. And I'm not advocating black on black crime or even giving it a scapegoat, but I want us to take a critical analysis on the language that we use and understand the power of words and vibration, which is a whole nother conversation. So when we say black on black crime, what we're doing is taking ownership of the crime, of the criminal activity. But that's something that was ascribed to us after our quote-unquote emancipation. If we understand black laws and black codes, that it was pretty much illegal to be a black man in America. If you were on a plantation yesterday and then you're free today, but you don't have a job, those were called vagrancy laws. So which you could be sent to jail for not having a job. But what's my resume? Because I was on the cotton plantation yesterday picking cotton. So I was there yesterday. What job do I have today? Where do I live today? So now you return me back to the plantation. But then here comes sharecropping and all the other nuances that go along with that peculiar institution called slavery. But we watch it manifest itself today just in the language on when we talk about activities in our community and how we treat one another, which is problematic. But that's all in the mind. See, the mind is the original universe. And I don't want to get too deep and lose people, but I want to talk about the power of the mind real quick and why we have to have a revolution of the mind.
Go ahead, brother.
All inventions started as an idea. Every invention, whether it's this chair I'm sitting on or this camera that I'm looking at, it did not exist prior to a person thinking it up and making it manifest itself. And this is very important because within our mind, those jumbled thoughts we have, writing is very important so we can get those thoughts out. It brings it into the real world. It brings it to the real world. So now whatever thought I have, without me saying the word, I write it down. Brother Mike can see it. So now I'm sharing a vision with him. And we can work together to bring this vision into a reality and make it manifest for the people who aren't here yet, i.e. our children and grandchildren. See, this is how the universe works, and we are the children of the Creator. And what do the Creator do? The Creator creates. And we as African people, as the Creator's first children, as the Creator's oldest children, we have the same exact power. Unfortunately, somebody done convinced us that we don't. So within this inner universe, whatever we want to see happen can happen, and we can make happen. We just have to believe it ourselves and know it to be true. So we write our thoughts and ideas now. And then we work on them, we mold them, and we make them manifest. And we bring them to fruition. If we really want freedom, we have to visualize freedom. Because unfortunately, when we talk about our African culture, when we talk about our history, we look at it from a victim paradigm. Unfortunately, and seldom do we look at it as a victor. So if you look at everything from a victim mentality, you're going to forever be a victim. But if you look at it as a paradigm of a victor, you'll forever be victorious. And anything that happens to you that don't work in your favor, you're always going to just look at it as a minor setback because you keep your eyes on the prize. You see the bigger picture. You see what's afoot here. I've been fortunate enough to have the privilege to go to Ghana a few times and visit the dungeons. I do not call them the castles. Again, as we talk about mindset and language, please, everybody who goes to Africa and goes to Ghana, please remove that from your lexicon. Stop calling it the slave castle. It was not a castle. Not for the Africans. It was a castle for the Europeans and a dungeon for the Africans. Because when you say A castle, you think of something palatial, you think of luxury, you think of opulence, somewhere that's comfortable. There was no comfort for the African in those dungeons. We have to call it what it is. So Brother Mike, I was fortunate to have the experience to go to the dungeons as a young black man from Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Grew up with all the gangsters and the gangster rappers. And I stood in that dungeon and I had an epiphany that we are our ancestors' prayers. Because sure enough, we go in the dungeon, they cut the lights out for 3 seconds just so you could get, that's not even a glimpse of what our ancestors had to go through. And then, you know, you walk out, you know, you feel that spiritual connection with the ancestors. It is what it is. But within that moment, you really have to think, that was 3 seconds. Imagine being locked in for 3 months. There's no such thing as air conditioner. There's no refrigeration or freezer system, so there's no ice water. There's no cold, fresh water to relieve you from the heat of being forcibly stuck in the dungeon. We really gotta imagine this. What our ancestors literally went through. You know, we really have to understand that some of our family members within our captivity were just there, dying, decomposing in the heat. We have to smell it, we have to step on it. This is a reality that existed for our family, but also the reality was the power of prayer and meditation, of a belief that this will not be for my children. This will not be for my grandchildren. And the struggle continues. So here I am, a young black man from Brooklyn, New York. I'm here in the dungeons, in Ghana, really touching the soil. I also walked on the path of the last bath in Ghana. This is when we were marched from the interiors. This is 30 miles out from the dungeon. This was the last bath that we were allowed to take at a river before we were taken to the dungeons to be shipped off all over the world. And you feel this calmness and this quietness. And when you get to the river, Brother Ray, there's still gold in the river. I asked my tour guide, I said, is this real gold? He said, yes, it is. I said, why don't the people mine it and take it up? He said, because this belongs to their ancestors. I thought that was powerful. Again, we're going to put it on a scale. What weighs more? The gold that the whole world seemed to go crazy over? Or honoring the memory and the tradition of their ancestors? What's more important? Their value system was intact.
Right.
We're going to honor our ancestors. Yeah, we can use the gold. We can mine this gold and go anywhere and get anything we want. But what's more important? What's afoot here? And they put it on the scale. And honoring the culture and tradition and the legacy of the ancestors outweighed all that gold that was in that river. So as we walk, I take my shoes off, I walk barefooted. And then I think about who I am, where I come from, and what does this trip mean to me. A young black man, grew up in Brooklyn, a former gangster, was involved in all types of criminal activities, been to the jail cells of Brooklyn House and Rikers Island and all that foolishness that gave us a falsified image of what the rites of passage in the hood is. You go to jail, you don't get raped, you get to use the phone, you get to call shots. That's your badge of honor. It's trash. Put it on a scale, it don't weigh to nothing. But if your mindset, remember we're talking about revolutionary mindset, if your mindset finds value in the things that don't move you or your community forward, you need a paradigm shift. You need to start reading some lectures. You need to start getting in tune with other people that are really doing the work, you know, because you need to read Soul Dad Brothers and read books by Mumia and understand what it really is to be incarcerated for a cause. You need to read Asada's book, Asada. You need to understand that if you're going to go to jail, what you're going to jail for? What is it really about? Is it to save the legacy of white supremacy, or is it to free your African people? Put it on the scale. You have to put it on the scale. You gotta, and if you're going to go to jail for a cause and not just because. But when you have an enslaved mindset based on the information that's given to you by those in power, you're going to constantly make the wrong choices because you have the wrong information. This is why the William Mackey Study Group and others are so important. This is why Thorough Black Talk is so important. We're going to give you a different perspective that's here to help you navigate through these hells of North America. Because unfortunately, I was having a conversation with someone recently, and we were talking about the murder of a young rapper named Takeoff. And he's from a big group called Migos that the kids listen to. They love him. Me, that's not my genre. I'm a little more old school with hip hop. But I posed this question to the person. Though they made millions of dollars and this young brother was murdered, if they could do it all over, do you think they would rather have him or the money? And of course, he was in a group with his brother and his uncle. This is family. I'm quite sure they would forfeit all those millions of dollars just to have their brother and their nephew back in their bosoms, to come home, walk through the door. Because the family is really feeling it right now. And my heart goes out to them. But where do we get this information from about our value system? And this now, Brother Mike, this is based on a check-in, what's called a check-in. Something that we as black people have always done. You come to somebody's town and city, you give them a heads up. Yo, I'm in your neighborhood, just checking in, letting you know I'm down here. I'll be in South Carolina for a couple of days. I'm trying to get by, let you see my face. But now with hip-hop, what has been done with our African tradition, check-in is a form of extortion. Yo, if you want to move around the town without people bothering you, you got to check in. Bring me 10, 20,000. Not saying this is every situation, but this is a lot of the situations. You check in, you come with the gift. But it's the same thing when you go to Ghana. It's the same thing when you go to African nations. But it's our custom. When you go see the chief, when you go meet the dignitaries and the elder, you go with the gift. When you go to somebody's house or to any type of social function, you go into the baby shower or the wedding reception, you come with the gift. It's just who we are as Africans. But unfortunately, with the thwarted mindset covered in Eurocentricity, we done took our African tradition of checking in, paying homage, just letting people know, hey, what's up, brother, I'm in your area, with the European mindset of extortion. What can I get from you? I don't want what you're offering. This is what I want. I want 10, 20 bands. This is what's going on in the new millennium. And if you don't pay that price, chances are you won't leave that town. You won't leave that city. And this is unfortunate because this is our future we're talking about. These are the influences on our young people. We don't have the influence we would like with our young people. And at Thorough Black Talk, we're working on that in conjunction with my other brother doing another podcast who's in hip hop. We're working on that. We're coming up on the influential rappers. And we're giving them the real on this death and destruction that we see in our community, because for every rapper that's out there, all of them talk about the pain of losing a friend during childhood. So now we have to unpack that. We have to have that mind shift change, that mindset shift. So we're going to bring up, what does this mean for the community? How did you feel when you lost your homeboy when you were 17, 18? Why will you perpetuate this pain on the children coming behind us? Many of the rappers and things like that now are parents themselves. So we have to not approach them as a rapper, but approach them as a parent, which most of us are proud to be. Many of us are proud to be parents. Whether our children make us proud or not, put it on a scale. But many of us are proud to be a father, a grandfather, a mother, a grandmother. Some are great-grandparents and are fortunate enough to see the fruits of their labor and see their legacy in real life, you know? And this is very important. So when we talk about being a revolutionary in the new millennium, what does that mean? What does that entail? How do we reach our children? But we have to take the ladder, because many of us are high up on the ladder. Then we have some people under us that do connect to us, that connect to people younger than them. See, we can't go from the top of the ladder, then jump to the bottom rungs and think these children are going to understand us, and we start talking about doctor this and doctor that, when the only doctor they know is Dr. Dre and Dr. Seuss. We can't get lost in that. You can't teach the people if you can't reach the people. And we have to reach the people where they are. And some of us are so far gone, we do have a disconnect. We do have a disconnect. So even as elders in the movement, there's still room for growth in our mindset to find ideas and ways we could connect to young people without being antiquated and corny with it. And even that means recruiting a person in their early 30s or something that may work in the community, who may have a connection with somebody in their early 20s that could talk to the young teens. This is very important because we are losing our young people at an enormous rate. Not to mention, we're losing each other through this pandemic and this poison that's being forced on us. So this is where we got to start changing our mindset, because the way we used to look at things yesterday, we can't look at it today. That world that we were prepared for by our parents and our grandparents no longer exists. That world is gone. We are literally starting from scratch in this new world. I think Bush, Obama, Clinton, all of them talked about the new world. All of them talked about the plans for the new world. But guess who also talked about the new world? Bob Adele Jones,
That's right.
Dr. John Henry Clark. What's our other brother? The name of names, our brother, our ancestor Steve Coakley.
Yes, sir.
So many talked about the new world. Yes, Dr. Ben talked about what's coming. Are we really prepared for it? We really have to ask this question, because I know a lot of elders are in fear, and rightfully so, because it does look grim, it does look bleak. But if you believe in our mission, you know that we can't lose. But you have to focus on winning. You have to see it. You have to identify what it looks like. And that's a question I often ask people. We're fighting for freedom, right? Check this out. I really want y'all at home to think about this. We say we fight for freedom, but what does freedom look like? The freedom that Joseph Sink fought for on Amistad is not the same freedom that Harriet Tubman fought for. The freedom that Harriet Tubman fought for is not the same freedom that Malcolm and Dr. King fought for. The freedom that Malcolm and Dr. King fought for is not the same freedom that Dr. Clark, Dr. Ben, and those who are still here, Dr. Jeffries and the likes, are fighting for. There's levels to what we consider to be freedom. So even when I was in the dungeons, what was freedom for them? Just to get out of that room and get back home to their village. But once you're on that ship, what does freedom look like? Freedom is just to take this ship and turn it around. But once you're on the plantation, now we have a paradigm shift, because we lost, we somewhere, and we don't even know if we're supposed to be going north, south, east, or west. So now our whole paradigm is changed, because we don't know where we are, but we just know we're not free. So now freedom takes on a new definition from the plantation.
True.
So once we get off the plantation, and there's the abolitionist movement, and slavery is abolished, at least chattel slavery is abolished, what does freedom look like? But now we have black code laws. So we're not in chains like our parents and grandparents were, but there's still a yoke that's prohibiting us to move freely. So what does that freedom look like? So now you got Jim Crow laws. Now you got the civil rights movement. Now you got the drug epidemic. Now we got this pandemic that's being forced on us. What does freedom look like to you? You have to visualize it and you have to identify it, because Dr. King was fighting so that we can spin out, rather we can go anywhere we want to. That's achieved. So is the fight over? Of course not. Dr. Clark, in his early development under Arturo Schomburg, was fighting for an identity, just to know who we are, just to be free of this Eurocentric idea of what it is to be a black man.
Right, right.
We're free from that paradigm. Some of us. What are we fighting for? Yesterday's score don't win today's game. Yesterday's score don't win today's game. What did the rapper Fat Joe say? Yesterday's price is not today's price. What worked yesterday ain't gonna work today. We have to have a new level of consciousness. In fact, there's a book by Dr. Clark and Dr. Ben. It's a yellow and blue book with King Tut on the front, New Dimensions in African History. We need to start revisiting that. Two of our great scholars, because they constantly talk about the paradigm shift and the way we think of things. So to be a revolutionary, we have to constantly upgrade our information, update our information, put it on a scale to what was wrote yesteryear and what are we dealing with today. Because none of them were talking about these false jabs. Because this wasn't a thing back then. Granted, you had them experimenting on us, but they're back with it and better than ever. They're constantly upgrading their weaponry. We're not upgrading our defense. We have to become proactive.
That's right.
So with that now, So we already covered physical fitness, and we talked about mental fitness, paradigm and mind shift. So now we have to go into the spiritual component. Because regardless of who you are and where you are and where you are in your stage of development in this life, everything comes back to you. Who are you? It's a very critical question. Now, I don't know the African paradigm of this thought process, but we do know about Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I believe there's 5 hierarchy of needs. There's the physiological needs, safety and security, belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization. As I learned from my brother Jabari Osazi in his conflict resolution course, because I took that with brother Jabari, he said most conflicts come from a need that's not being met in somebody's life, which I thought was powerful, because I look at my own life and where I grew up in the hood. Most people that rob and steal because their need is for money and resources, so they steal. But I say that to say that within you, we all physiological needs, food, we need food, we need clothing, we need shelter. That's our first need. That's a basic need. That's nothing any of us gonna argue about. There's no debate on that. Then there's need to belong. We're social creatures. We just are. We need to belong to a group, right? That's rather safety and security, because this comes with our shelter. This is our shelter. Let me not jump too far. Our shelter, we need decent housing, something to protect us from the elements, something to protect us from wild animals and those things that don't got our best interest. We need that shelter, right? Whether it's literal or proverbial shelter, we need to be protected. Then we need to belong. And this is where things get dicey often. Our need to belong is a group. So we put it on a scale since we're social people. Do we hold our family in high regards or our social circle in high regards? Many of us that come into this knowledge have been met with resistance, not from people outside, but people within our house. I remember when I first started eating pork, my family thought I was going crazy. Like, what's wrong? You Muslim? When I started talking about God ain't white, and Jesus this and all that other stuff, you know, when I started bucking what the family believed in, they thought I lost my mind. But now I got a new social group that understands. So we put it on a scale. Who holds more weight in my life is a question I ask myself. And just to give you the answer, my family always going to hold more weight than my social group. I can never come into this knowledge and deny the people that gave me life.
Amen.
That's right.
And the people, you know, real quick, while we're still talking about belonging. But Thanksgiving, I watch everybody on social media, buck Thanksgiving, buck Thanksgiving, buck Thanksgiving, up and down, left and right, European holiday, da-da-da. I get it. I read Dr. Barashangu's book, African People and European Holidays, book 1 and 2. I really like 1 better than 2, but I read them both. But the one thing I know about being an African, nothing trumps family. Nothing holds more weight than family. So my grandmother, Southern woman, Bernice Bookman, from Newberry, South Carolina, love her pork, got white Jesus on the wall over the bed, and said, come by for Thanksgiving. Grandma don't want to hear, Grandma, I read these books and I learned that. She don't want to hear that.
Right.
Grandma want to see your face in the place. That trumps everything. That trumps my favorite scholar. That trumps my favorite book. That even trumps the man I'm growing into, because the man that I was growing into and still growing into understand the value and paying homage to a woman that made it possible for me to be alive.
Amen.
So my grandmother asked to come over. She put pork in the greens, pork everything. Only thing I can eat is rice, biscuits, and turkey. And she asked, who that was just eating rice and biscuits? Everybody's like, Tad. So you don't want nothing? Grandma, I don't eat pork no more. But nothing's going to take me away from spending time with family, because my grandmother is now since transitioned, and I'm glad that I got to spend time with her, ask her how did her and Pop meet, why they broke up. You know, I was even fortunate enough to visit her hometown. Most people haven't even visited their grandparents' hometown. And to see the excitement in her face as a little girl, talking about going through the backwoods to the juke joint. Her and her cousin Susie Mae, who's still alive, used to go back there in the woods. And the woods was still there, the juke joint is still standing.
That's right.
Juke joint is still there. But the level of excitement that existed for my grandmother in this little country town that I was in, because I'm from Brooklyn or Fulton Street, I like the trains and all that. But the sacrifices we make for those we love.
Amen.
So coming back to the hierarchy of needs, the need to belong, your social group, your organization, your African-centered organization, your religious organization, whatever your family. So if your family smoke crack, addicted to alcohol, still eating ham and cheese, and you got a problem with that, don't shun them. Be the leader. Be the guidance that you felt was missing in your development coming up in the family. But you don't abandon your family. That's not African in itself. So you literally become a walking contradiction. So you have an internal conflict because your need for belonging is really not being met, because we know in any social group things fall apart. Just like with your family, we're all human, nobody's perfect. We watch the UNIA fall apart. We watch the rise and fall of the Nation of Islam. We watch it go on with so many organizations, but your family is always going to be your family. Your blood is always going to be your blood. You cannot change that. That is anti-African to even denounce that. You are who you are. Embrace it and accept it. So in this paradigm of belonging, what holds more weight? Family or your social circle? So now that you identify which holds value, self-esteem kicks in. Who are you within this group? Are you the leader that everybody comes to for guidance, information? Are you a resource? Are you a skilled person within the movement? Or are you somebody at the bottom of the totem pole? You just the person to go copy flyers, give them out, go to the store. That's your job. Who are you within that group of where you belong? And that will determine self-actualization. That's the top of the pyramid. But in self-actualization, and you ask yourself, who are you? Is this who you want to be? And this is where you want to be. You literally have to ask yourself. You got to do some deep soul searching when you're in this movement, because things are always bound to change. Leadership change, politics change, geopolitics change, as we see going on right now in America. These are things we have to ask ourselves. Because once we come to self-actualization and identify who we are, we get in touch with God, our higher self, our higher consciousness, whatever you want to identify it as. Allah, Buddha, Judah, Jehovah, Yahweh, or a head of lettuce. Whatever you identify your highest self as, that is your God. I once read a quote that said, imagine each man is his own example. His God knows which of him walks the most straight. That's dealing with integrity. No matter who you are, no matter how good you look in public, you know when you messing up. And when you messing up and you want to be this dude that you selling to the public, you got to go back home and do some real deep soul searching. And you got to ask your God / higher consciousness, higher self for guidance and direction. This is very important. You cannot have a revolution without a spiritual component to it. And why do I say that? Because African revolution, the black revolution, is different from any other revolution in the world.
Right.
You can't name one.
Right.
Different from the sexual revolution, the economic revolution, the cultural revolution. Why is our revolution so different? Because our revolution is to put things back in tune with nature, the way the Creator created it. No man was born a slave. No man was born in bondage. These are social constructs that's created. We are looking to go back to a natural way of living, the way the universe and nature has created. That's what makes our job so hard. That's what makes it so difficult. Because look at the sexual revolution. They started, let's give them the 1960s. What's that, about 60 years ago? About 50, 60 years ago. They already everywhere. Why? Because there's no real protocol. There's no structure. There's no organization. There's no discipline. Anything goes within that sexual movement. So you start with a couple letters, LBGT. Then you put the QIA. Then you put the LMNOP+++. We know nature only identifies two genders, male, female. But you leave it to this other community, they say there's at least 30 expressions of gender. How, when it's only boy and girl? But see how they make things up as they go along? But check it out. Let's go back to the revolutionary mindset. They created that paradigm. They created their reality, the way they could function and exist and have things benefit them just by thought. Whether we agree with it or not doesn't matter. The fact that they took an idea and made it their reality is powerful. And we have to do that. We really have to harness that energy. We really have to get our heads out the clouds, and for the cowards, stop burying your head in the sand. We really have to be clear on what is freedom. We constantly talk about we're fighting for freedom, but I promise you, if everybody put in the chat, what does freedom look like to them, you're going to get a different answer from everybody. African sovereignty is good, but it's very vague. It's very vague. If you've been to Africa, you understand that there's conflicts there. Not everywhere, but it's just a human experience. Like, you don't get along with all your brothers and sisters. That's just the way it is. That's just life. But we have to be more specific. And in my development, moving along in life, becoming a personal trainer, life coach, all these things that I do outside of community work, I've learned about this thing called SMART goals. S-M-A-R-T. You have to identify your goals. Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. SMART goals. We really have to start identifying things and stop being so ambiguous and broad. Because the world is moving so fast. And this is why we're being left behind. Because a lot of these little soft skills, as they're called, we're not being taught. We're constantly in one paradigm on a hamster wheel. There are those who just love the knowledge and information, but won't get out on the front line and do the work. Like a brother Mike Graves, like a brother Ray Ray, who will go out on the front line and know that there's more to this to just me knowing it. I gotta get active. But then there's more to me being active. I gotta be supportive. There's more to being supportive. I gotta live it. These brothers of the William Mackey group really live it, not just talk it. And that's powerful because this is not a glamorous thing. This revolutionary thing is not a glamorous thing. Every day I wake up, I ask, what can I do more to help my people move forward? But then, as Adam Clayton Powell said, cast your buckets where you stand. You can do the work right where you are. Start with your family. Start with your friends. Start being the example. When they pass you that bottle, they pass you that blunt, be like, nah, I'm good. Remember the first time I started smoking weed? They was like, yo, something, nah, I'm good. What's up with you? Nah, I'm trying something. What I was trying was discipline. I asked myself, can I stop smoking weed for 30 days? Do I have control over this substance or does it have control over me? And I challenged myself. And that's what we have to constantly do. We have to challenge ourselves. Challenge those things we love. Challenge those things we find pleasure in. Ask, why do we find pleasure in it? Stop smoking weed, saved a lot of money. Also started seeing things clearly. Stop being lazy. Start being more invested. Started caring more. Because when you hide, you're covering the pain of something that you haven't dug into yet. And we have to peel back the layers and find out what is it that makes us find pleasure in watching somebody else suffer. Watch somebody get hit by a car. Yo, that car rocked them. Find pleasure in watching people fail. Not realizing failure is part of success. It's part of the journey to success. You're not going to succeed if you haven't had failures. In fact, even reading Harriet Tubman's book, Moses of Our People, there was one passage where she talked about, she organized some people to help them get off the plantation. She goes there. She's on a mission now. She goes there. It's snowing. She stands in the freezing cold. Nobody showed up. Not one person. So, all intents and purposes, we could call that mission a failure because she didn't get nobody off the plantation that night. But that's to their bad because nobody showed up. Freedom Train ain't waiting for nobody. Nobody showed up. That's their bad. Just like we see so many times when you try to organize our community, you try to get an event space to have people come out. Sometimes people don't show up. That's just what it is. Same thing our ancestors dealt with, but that's all right. It's not a failure. It's not a failure. It's part of the process on the road to success. It just is what it is. You know, and we have to start identifying as that. Some people don't have the event they think they should have, and they just want to throw it in. Oh, black people, we ain't never gonna be free. We stupid. We don't care. I ask people when they say that, then what are you fighting for? If you don't believe we can win, what are you fighting for? Let me know. Because you got a defeatist mentality. And Garvey already said that. If you believe you defeated, you already lost before you started.
That's right.
You have to visualize. Go back to the mindset, a revolutionary mindset. We really got to visualize and we got to walk around as if we won. Because we won the old battles. We got out the dungeon. We got off the Amistad. We got off the plantation. We crushed Jim Crow. We kind of quelled the lynchings because we definitely fought back, but that's something different. My sister Keisha could talk about it, Brother Mike Graves, because they would definitely have you believe that we never fought back, that we just bent over and just took punishment. Nah, we kicked tail too. But that's a part they don't want you to hear, because if you see it, you can believe it. If you believe it, you will achieve it. So they intentionally block our successful fights, struggles, revolutions, whatever you want to call it. They intentionally do it because they know if you see it, you can achieve it. This is very important. And this is why in the new millennium, we got to understand the tools that they've been using so long, because we now have children and grandchildren who are adults who should have much of this information that we have, if not way more. But I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, and I see people with remedial black history getting tens of thousands of views and likes. And granted, I'm glad you're starting somewhere, but we're centuries behind. It's a new millennium. This is not the year 2000. I'm quite sure many of us can remember the year 2000. We in 2023. So for many of us who was born in the 60s, 70s, we can say we about 3-4 lifetimes in. Because a 21-year-old is an adult. So 20 years ago, I was an adult. How about 20 years before that? I wasn't an adult, but I was a young person, but I'm quite sure many viewers and people watching were adults.
Let me stop you for a minute, brother. I gotta commend you for your presentation.
Thank you, brother, because
it's heavy.
I'm almost done, but thank you, brother.
Just hold up, Doc.
Because I'm about to wrap it up, because we hit our 3 points. We hit our 3 points to be a revolutionary new millennium: physical fitness, mental fitness, and paradigm shift in our mindset, and spiritual fitness. And that comes with identifying who you are, having that honest conversation, looking at where you are. What was your legacy? What is your legacy? Did you teach your children all that you wanted to? Did you equip them with everything you thought they should have? And only you know that answer. Because before we could walk out our door and save the world, we need to save the people within our house. And many of us do have domestic issues. I'm not talking about violence or nothing like that, but we're competing against a global system. And we a lone voice in the wind while our daughters are looking at housewives and looking at all these people in the nice Benzes and Instagram and flying all over the country. And that's nice to travel the world. The world belongs to us. But the mindset has to be in place. It's cool to travel the world. It's cool to have nice things. Ain't nothing wrong with a little bit of luxury. Nothing wrong with that. But we have to check our value system. Will you kill a brother for a gold chain? Do you value that chain more than his life? Will you steal from your parents to go on your girl's trip? Take mama's rent money, mortgage money to hang out with your girls? This is what a lot of young people are doing because the value system is out of whack. But we're not showing them the value in our value system because we're creating a disconnect. And we're not taking a hard road, because it is hard to get young people to see things the way you see it. But we're not there to make them see it through our eyes. It's to give them information and guidance, because they're out here. They're in this temperature and climate. I can only take the words of those who was there in the 60s, because I was not there. I was born in 73. So when I hear about the 60s, I have to take the word for the people that were there. Like when I talk to young people about hip-hop, I grew up with Biggie Smalls. I literally grew up with Foxy Brown. Like, I know these people from single digits. Like, we all hung out and partied together and drank 40s and smoked blunts while we were figuring life out. while we're trying to figure life out, we were doing all of this together. So I can talk to young people about what it was to hang out with Biggie and just be in his presence, who was dead before the average 20-year-old was born, because he died 26 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He died 26 years ago. So a 20-year-old wasn't even around when he was rapping. So we have to share our experience, give guidance, and talk about how the system is structured for their failure and things we could do to win. And introduce them to some of our greats, our ancestors, just to let them know there's another way of thinking about things, because we got this, in America, we got this monolithic idea of how the world works. And we have to shatter that because the world is getting smaller, you know? So I want to say to the people, I want to thank y'all for tuning in, joining me, the support. I want to thank Brother Ray, Brother Mike for, having me. Definitely want to thank the African Village Research and Culture Center. Definitely want to give a shout out to my brother Irritated Genie. I can't forget my Thorough Black Talk team, my sister Keisha, brother Ashe, brother Blacksmith, and sister Marcia, who both have been a dope addition to our platform. And Brother Ray, it's not next Thursday, we'll be back on the 2nd, February 2nd, Our Story History Month. We'll be back then. So I definitely want to thank so many people. There's too many people to thank, but I'm just appreciative, I'm thankful, and hopefully you get some thought and consideration to what I presented to you tonight. So with that, I'll say, Hotep.
Give Brother Ted a great big hand. Okay, we're gonna open up the floor with a question and answer for about 15 minutes. The first question is going to be from the floor for Brother Ted. Anybody have a question? Brother Mike.
Yeah, just first I want to commend you, Brother Ted, for your presentation. You want some soup? You did something that Malcolm was always known for. Malcolm always said, make it plain. And your lecture tonight was just so plain. You didn't use big words. You didn't use complicated examples. You basically made it plain so nobody here or in the Zoom audience can claim they didn't understand anything. You made it plain and basic. Just want to ask you about growing up in Brooklyn. You mentioned Brooklyn, and Brooklyn to some people is Tombstone, it's wild, it's the wild, wild west. People in other boroughs, they can travel to all the other boroughs, but they're a little hesitant in coming to Brooklyn. What was your childhood like in Bed-Stuy?
Oh man, a literal African village. A literal African village. It was so great, and it was funny. I went to junior high school 258, right there on Holding, on Macon and
Compton.
I went, named after David Ruggles. And it was almost like junior jail back in the 80s. But as dangerous as it was in the height of the crack epidemic, I felt safe, because one thing I remember as a young person is that all adults looked out for children. Adult business was adult business, children business was children business. Adults weren't afraid of children back then. I went to every borough in the early 80s. I'm like 12, 13 going to any borough. My mother used to always say, you know how to get there? Then you can go. And I was gone, but there was a safety, because black women I viewed as my mother or grandmother. Black men were like, I have a reverence for my father. That's my dude. We were just talking before I came here. So all other men were like my uncles, not necessarily my father, because that position I keep strictly for him. Thank you, Sister Devlin. But there was a safety that I really can't describe. It's like when you go to Ghana, when I was in Ghana, late at night you see little children walking around. Nobody's afraid, because everybody knows that child belongs to us. And that's what I felt growing up in Bed-Stuy. All the drugs, all the violence, I still felt like I was a child that belonged to Brooklyn, and Brooklyn had my back. So that's what it's like for me.
Okay. Anybody from the Zoom audience have a question for Brother Ted? Zoom audience, question?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Brother True, that's you, Brother True?
Yes, peace, Brother Ted.
Okay.
Peace, brother. True.
I wanted to commend you on your presentation. I think you took a holistic approach. You touched on many subjects that a lot of us that's been around for many years can identify with. It's really rewarding to see a younger man be able to present himself in such a fashion, and I would like to know where does the name at this stage in your development Tad come from, and what does it mean to me?
What does the name? Well, thank you for your compliments, brother. The name Tad. It's a funny story. Like I said, I hold my father in high regards. He's dealt with substance abuse. He has over 3 years clean right now. So we constantly. My real name is Clarence, right? I'll tell you a funny story. I don't always tell this publicly, but the name Tad is short for Tadpole.
Okay.
And my name is Tadpole because my father's his nickname is Frog. So when my mother got pregnant, they said she's gonna have a little tadpole. So ever since I was born, my name was Tadpole, and they just say Tad.
Okay.
That's where the name Tad comes from.
All right.
It's that simple. That's the truth.
Got it. Let's keep it plain.
Yes.
Okay, next question is going to be from the live audience. Anybody from the live audience got a question?
Yes, I just want
No,
to
no,
say.
hold up. This is the live audience. You're next.
Yeah,
Okay,
my brother is my
can I say
first.
something?
No, you're next. You're next.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Believe me, you did a great job, everything was on point. You did mention something about protesting. I think at this point we have to use all strategy. Protesting, lobbying, petitioning, whatever it takes, just like the military knows how to break it down. You got the Marines, the Army. So I think with the young people, they do know how to do a lot with social media, but they don't know how to sustain a movement. And so that's why we have to really work on that. As my son said, it's fusion. We have to use everything that would make us go forward for the struggle. Thank you.
Yes. And I appreciate that comment. And I agree with you 100%. I don't know if I was clarified it or not, but when we talk about the protest, and maybe I should have qualified this with, the protest is not the end-all be-all. The protest is to agitate the people to bring awareness to what is happening. Unfortunately, some people just think that's it. We march, that's it. Lobbying, very important. I don't shun politics at all. I don't shun politics. I believe in engaging in politics if that's your thing. Some people, as you know, within our community are against politics. But again, let's put it on a scale. Let's put it, if it's politics your thing, go for it. If it's not, if it don't apply, let it fly. But I agree with you 100%.
Okay. Next question from the floor.
Yeah, my brother, first of all, I would say that this is my first encounter with you, and I was very impressed with your presentation. You touched on a number of points, some I've struggled with for years. I feel, because I've made this journey, the white Jesus and the white images that we see are facades, because we've had to put on old master, right? I was at a temple some years ago, and a brother was criticizing Christianity, and his sister got up and said, we got to be careful, because in that passage, that was all that we had. So there's a deep spiritual meaning behind the facade of the images that we see. And that's the African spirituality. It had to be disguised. When you speak about leaders today are not training young people to carry the struggle forward. I had a good example a couple of weeks ago, Martin Luther King weekend. I was down in Georgia. My granddaughter was in The Wiz, and I was fascinated. The choreographer and the producer had more than 100 young people from 2-3 years old to teens, and they were a part of the program. influencing these young people. You know what it's like to be 2 years old and then growing up and say, I was in the wheels, you know. So the notion of training young people to carry the battle is significant, and you raised it. And I have to commend you for that. I know several lies, but I just maybe after we can speak or whatever.
Yes.
But I want to say I respect you. I respect your presentation. It's right on target. More power to you.
Thank you so much, brother.
Okay, Zoom audience, anybody from the Zoom have a question for Brother Tad?
Yes, Brother Tad, that was an excellent presentation.
Thank
I
you.
really love your perspective of pulling the old with the new, the young with the old, and having a way to connect through the influences that they respect. I was wondering, is your blog talk show, is your radio show on Blog Talk?
No, it's not on Blog Talk.
I was wondering where I could listen to more of your perspective and learn more.
You can go to YouTube, Thorough Black Talk, on YouTube.
Thorough Black Talk on
Thorough
YouTube.
Black Talk with Brother Tad,
Okay.
Sister Keisha,
I'll do that. Thank
Brother
you.
Ashe. Thank you, brother.
Thank you. Okay, we gotta have a question from the floor. Okay. Question from the floor?
Yeah, but I'll let somebody else go.
All right, so Zoom audience, we got one more question from the Zoom audience because we got to get Tad out. Zoom audience, anybody got a question for Brother Tad? Going once? Going twice? 3 times, that's a wrap. Okay, question from the floor, Brother Mike.
Yeah, just want to commend you, because I think that it was destiny that a person like you would meet under whatever circumstances it happened, whether you was going to the store or just taking a walk, that you met Dr. Collins. Because you used the word in describing him that anytime I mention him, more often than not, there's a word that I use to describe Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad that kind of separates him from most people that I know in any walk of life, whatever their discipline is, and that's sincerity. And you use that term tonight. Speak to your lasting effects that you feel to this very day, as long as he's been separated from us, about Dr. Khalid Abdul Muhammad.
I'm glad you brought that up, because it's something that I inspire to, and sometimes I think as an influencer or a leader, we all struggle with that. His was unabashed. His honesty, like how he had the capacity to shut somebody down right on the spot. Even if you're cool, case in point, there was a video I saw with Dr. Khalid and Bobby Hemming. And he shut Bobby Hemming down. Don't be telling our people this stuff, as opposed to being political and diplomatic, waiting until after the show, after the lecture, and pulling them to the side. But I think true leadership is embedded in bravery. You don't always have to be right. You don't have to always know everything, but you definitely have to be committed and have a strong belief in what it is you're doing. What I've learned is that some people want that title leadership just for the title, not the work. Again, the ego, put it on the scales. They just want to be recognized as the leader as opposed to actually doing the work as a leader. And that was my experience, even in the formation of Straight Black Pride. When I was the North Regional Director, there was an issue amongst folks who wanted to be in leadership. And when somebody wants to be the leader, as opposed to being appointed to the leader, you gotta watch them. Because only the people could decide if you really represent their best interest. And that's being in a room with somebody, like really looking each other in the eye, giving that dab, that hug, that real physical contact, where you could test people's energy. Then people are like, yo, that's a solid brother. I rocks with him. As opposed to somebody just coming in, I think I should be the leader because I got this credential, I got that credential, I've been here, I've been there. That's somebody that's the ego speaking. And we got to check that, because They will sacrifice the nation to save themselves as opposed to sacrifice themselves to save the nation. We got to watch them. So with Dr. Khalid, his sincerity, being around him, just sitting in the room, watching him talk to people from the lectures to after the lectures, just having conversations like, what's the next move as an organization, as people? All right, we spoke to the people tonight. What's our next move? What we doing now? And he was talking about organizing, constantly organizing. Because we knew Dr. Khalid was all over the place. So he got people connected here, got people there, like we do. You know, we got people in Baltimore, D.C., Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina. You know, we're using our stretch because we really have to come together because it's only us helping us. So with that, in terms of leadership, he's a phenomenal leader, as I saw with Dr. Khalid, and I saw the same. In fact, when I met Irritated Genie, this is that I told him, you remind me of Dr. Khalid without you even trying to act like him. Your sincerity, your conviction, whether he's right or wrong, his belief. And that's what made Irritated Genie an effective leader, because he was honest and he was sincere about what it was he was doing. Like, you know, we done stayed at each other's house. He stays up all night working. Like, dude, you're not going to go to sleep. He'd be the last one asleep, the first one woke, and he don't deviate from the conversation. You know, anything that people may think about the brother is any character flaw they may see. I mean, you're going to be critiqued as a leader. That's just what it is. But I can personally say, as somebody who walked with the brother, glad to call him a friend and a brother, even though me and him ain't always agree, and I always tell him, when I first met him, I thought he was out of his mind. You know, that's a joke we always share.
Right.
And as men, you're not always going to agree.
Right.
Because if we always agree, we got a problem. Because steel ain't sharpening steel right now. You know what I'm saying? But his commitment under all kinds of fire, sacrificing his 6-figure job, losing so much for people who may not seem very grateful. That's the makings of a real leader right there. And then when we talk about the minister Vernon Wells, you know Brother Vernon yourself. That meticulous man don't touch that man's wires. He wrapping up his equipment. He's so meticulous and organized. He literally crossed every T and dot every I. And he's sincere about helping our folks. He's not an angry black man. And if he is, he don't walk around it. He's a loving black man. And his whole thing is, how can I help you? And that's a leadership quality you don't see in a lot of people. Because unfortunately, within our movement, a lot of people get fanfare by always being angry. You know what these crackers did? You know what these devils did? But some of our folks who's not used to that, some of us just want to be loved. I just want to be loved on me. I don't want to argue. I don't want to be mad no more. I'm already mad at the people on my job. I don't want to be mad.
Well, just want to commend you, brother, because you mentioned the Irritated Genie, and I concur with you. He is sincere, and certainly Vernon Wells, who I've worked with for decades.
Yes.
I know his commitment and his seriousness, and those two that you linked with Dr. Khalid. You know, I agree with you so much on those two because Dr. Munderson want to talk with you after, and this is a protege of Dr. Ben, and he is sensing that same sincerity in you because he said, man, I want to talk to you right after this. Yeah. So it struck a responsive chord in him, hearing certain things coming from you tonight. Like I said, you made it plain, and I commend you.
Thank you, brother.
Okay, Brother Ray. Brother Ted, I want to thank you. Excellent. Can you give the audience a little more information on the Better Days Fitness that Brother Ted is into? Because, you know, we see each other, and I see you training people. So can you just give them a little bit more in-depth on the importance of exercise, food, and health? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Brother Ray. Yeah, like Brother Ray said, man, we be seeing each other in the gym early morning. That's how serious it is. And Brother Ray, they ain't got enough plates in the gym for him. He be moving all them big weights. Brother Ray's strong as I don't know what. He be moving big plates. But yeah, you can follow me on Facebook, Better Days Ahead Fitness. Also on Instagram as Coach Tad Cromwell, Better Days Ahead Fitness. This is a program that I'm developing rather it's already developed. I'm a certified personal trainer and a certified life coach. This is some of the things that I feel our community needs, but it's pretty much for everybody. This is my business. You can follow me there. Also, please follow us on Thorough Black Talk. And please be on the lookout for OG Wisdom Podcast. OG Wisdom Podcast is with me and my brother C. Gutter from Junior Mafia, who worked with Biggie and Little Kim. He was their security. He was the main gangster. For many people who know that any type of violence that erupted with Junior Mafia, he was the muscle. He was the man. What I didn't know is that he's very African-centered, and that his father was part of the group Sunrise. So when he came home from his 16-year prison bid, he said, Brother Tad, I see what you're doing. We got to get together. We got to work. I only know him as a gangster in the streets, but he's African-centered, and this goes in alignment with what I feel my purpose is, and that's to bring the street element and our community together. We have to dissolve the disconnect that exists. We have to, because we all we have. We understand that the disconnect is based on Willie Lynch's letter. Whether it's real or not, it's definitely working, and it's effective.
Right.
So, yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, this is the last question. Zoom audience, anybody have a question for Brother Tad? Okay, ladies and gentlemen, give Brother Tad a great big hand. Thank you, Zoom audience.
Great information, my brother.
Thank you, Zoom audience, for participating in the Brooklyn William Mackey Jr. History Club. Black History Month is coming up in February. Hopefully, Brother Truss will be able to come here because he always does February, Black History Month. So we want to give everybody a great big hand.